Burnout is technically defined by the World Health Organization as a work-related condition. But let's be real, the stress, the emotional toil, and the exhaustion can spill into every other part of our lives. Relationships, social commitments, and even personal goals. There is ongoing debate about whether the World Health Organization's definition captures the whole picture, but rather than dive into the technicalities, I am not a health professional. I want to talk about something deeply personal, what I'll call being overwhelmed by life. And here's why I bring out burnout in the first place. My feeling of overwhelm at a particular point in my life was deeply connected to my lack of fulfillment at work. Hi, I'm Adjoa and welcome to Passionfroot, where we pursue lives of purpose together. I'm one of the creators on this platform, a lover of academic learning, a public speaker, and a content creator sharing my journey through travel and storytelling at Adjoa in Ghana. Adjoa in Ghana. Like many young people, I've felt the immense pressure to succeed early, set myself up for the future, and always be grateful, no matter how drained I felt. While these ideas are well-intentioned, they can become suffocating. Recently, I read an article about a teacher who reached her breaking point. She was working 70-hour weeks, dragging herself to work, exhausted, irritable, and unable to concentrate. No amount of sleep or time off helped. Her mind was foggy. She felt stuck. Her story was one of the most validating things I'd read. And what hit me even harder, a psychiatrist in the article pointed out that society often blames individuals for not handling stress well enough, as if burnout is purely an individual failing. Looking back, I realized I was blaming myself too. The guilt and shame I carried weren't just internal, meaning they were stemming from myself and how I personally felt about the situation, but they were tied to societal expectations and then the self-imposed pressure to always be on. Have you ever felt like this? You walked away from conversations feeling like you're not doing enough. For me, and unfortunately, like that teacher, it took me reaching breaking point before I made real changes. She ended up leaving teaching, something she once loved, and described the experience as both terrifying and freeing. And I really got that because I wrestled with pride, fear of letting others down, but more importantly, letting myself down. I'm not sure if you've heard that song by Beyonce, Pretty Hurts. You stripped away the masquerade, the illusion has been changed. Are you happy with yourself? Are you happy with yourself? It's really this reflective question that I was asking when I was going through this period. Am I happy with myself? Taking away the illusion, taking away the mask, and what's left staring back at me is my reflection. So how do I feel about what I'm seeing? So here's what I learned. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is change course. If I had let societal expectations dictate my path, I would have stayed in a career that drained me rather than pursuing the life that I truly wanted. And by God's grace, I get to live now. So what was the biggest shift for me? Embracing creativity, which is very fitting for Passionfruit. Every single one of the Passionfruits is an incredible creative talent, but more importantly, beyond the talent is that appreciation for creative values, that creative value of self-expression and pursuing meaning, which is what we're all about here at Passionfruit. Think about your first dreams as a child, because the first dreams I had as a child were not about climbing the corporate ladder or reaching the upper echelons of society. They were about using my voice, creating, designing, storytelling, and shaping the world around me in a way that aligned with my values. And so if you're someone who doesn't have a neatly packaged job title or a clear answer to what do you do. You're not alone. Mary Ellen, an incredible Passionfroot creator who has a video on this channel about living in the present moment and what does take us away from that. And she spoke about this question of what do you do being very indicative of the society we live in, which is all about quantifying your value and all about placing a value on you based on how productive you are. And for a long time, I'm sure you can relate, I dreaded that question, what do you do? Because to me, it doesn't encapsulate or capture the essence and fullness of who we are. I can't tell you what I do. I can't tell you who I am in one word. And if I was to try to do that, I'd probably get a strange response because my answer is not fitting into the box of what is considered, oh, yep, I recognize that as productive to the society. Check. I, on a personal note, have a dual heritage, English, Irish, and Ghanaian. And for a long time, I would really justify my background to people who were interested in placing me in a certain ethnic box. And even forms don't necessarily have a box for having a dual identity, a dual ethnic background, or anything like that. And it just reminds me of the fact that I also have that perspective that has taught me, no, I'm not going to simplify and water down my experience so that it's more comfortable for you. And so when I say you don't have to fit into a box, I'm not trying to incite us to be problematic or difficult, but just for your own internal peace and for your own mindset to become more expansive, I think we need to go beyond these titles, beyond these boxes, because there's so much more to us than the hours we spend doing our quote unquote jobs. And so even with creativity, it isn't just about the vehicle you use to express your creativity. That could be music, it could be a visual art like paint, sculpture, but it's about the very way you design your life. So creativity, if you're thinking, am I creative? Creativity is even your approach to designing your life. Because at one point I even questioned if I was creative enough to be on the Passionfroot platform. But I've realized art is subjective. It's personal and expansive, much like life is. So what has my experience feeling overwhelmed by life taught me that could possibly be of encouragement to you? I've written down a few of my reflections and they just came to me as a stream of consciousness. So I want to share those with you now. Firstly, you are not wrong for not fitting into a traditional professional title. Secondly, creativity can be a guiding light in the darkness. It can be a guiding light when life feels overwhelming. Next, don't blame yourself for feeling stuck. Instead, ask, what if I didn't let pressure dictate my path? And that speaks to curiosity, which is something I believe we do very well as young people, is having a curious mindset. And children have curious minds. And we hear this discussion around returning to that childlike mindset. And even in spiritual practices, there's a lot of connection to the childlike state, because the child is filled with wonder, the child is filled with hope, the child sees opportunities where an adult would see challenges or the negative. A child questions why, whereas I think that as adults we're living in this society of this is the way it should be. Don't question it, otherwise you're sidelined. So then next, in that same vein, stepping back is sometimes the only way forward. When you feel stuck, stepping back, I know in my own experience, and in that experience of the teacher I read about, it was by taking a step back for her from teaching, or for me it was taking a step back from my corporate career to really evaluate. And I know that, everyone's life circumstances are different. We don't always have these luxuries of time, the time to think about, do we want to be doing this, or even the resources to be able to have the time to consider that question. So whatever stepping back looks like to you, that's just something to think about. And we're almost there, The next thing I would say is be flexible. Life is about pivoting. It's not just when it comes to work, it's not just when it comes to our goals, but it's just about even the daily happenings are not always going to go according to our vision or plan. And so how can we pivot? How can we turn those pain points into power that can fuel us to keep moving forward? And then finally, which is I think my favorite part of this experience in terms of what I've taken away from it, and that is trust yourself. You know what fuels you. You know what your strengths are. You know what ambitions you have. Trust yourself. And if you're like me, trust in a higher power. For me, trusting in God, knowing that all will work together for my good. And I believe all will work out together for your good. And sometimes it's just about taking that first step. Sometimes it's about taking that pivot. Sometimes it's about making that change and commitment towards a more creative way of living that can really bring the ease that you're looking for amidst this period of overwhelm. So right now, I'm still, as a young person, working out the details of my life, but the big picture is clear. And so I would encourage you to think about, what is your big picture? Because for me, I've thought about it, and that is, I want a life of purpose, spiritual connection, and the freedom to do meaningful work, and most importantly, share the joys and pleasures of life with those I meet and those I love. And so my hope is that if this reaches one person who is currently experiencing overwhelm, that it helps in some way. If you are feeling lost and in crisis, seek professional help. I can't emphasize that enough. For me, it was therapy, and that really helped me. So, you deserve support, and it is really important you seek out the professional help, because a video like this, if you're in crisis, is not going to help you. You do need that professional intervention. And I'm speaking to myself, because I, in my period of crisis, was looking to a lot of self-help content, which I do believe has its place, but when you are in crisis, you do need that professional intervention and support. So really look at what is available to you, because there are resources that could be subsidized where you don't have to pay as well. And so it's really important you seek and find those out. Also, be kind to yourself and be kind to others. We don't know what others are going through, and perhaps it is that strong person that seems like everything is holding together that is actually really struggling behind closed doors, because I know that was me. So let's be kind to one another, and let's ask that question, are you okay? But if we're going to ask that question, let us be prepared for the answer and to validate others' experiences, because I can tell you from experience, feeling overwhelmed is a very isolating experience, especially when you feel that you need to be performing at a certain level. And if you have one slip, if this was to come out that this is what you're dealing with, then you're going to be labeled as incapable. Breaking the stigma is important. And so a conversation can go a long way, but we need to know how to answer that question. We need to know how to ask that question responsibly. How are you? Are you okay? Now, have you navigated overwhelm? We are a community here at Passionfroot, so we would love to hear from you in the comments, and what has helped you in that period of overwhelm that could possibly be an encouragement to someone who comes across this video and is looking at the comment section. Until next time, let's keep growing together. Take care. Mm-hmm.